Geo Tracker. It's okay to like cute things. You're still a man. It's okay to go slow and take your time. You're still a man. It's okay to be friend-shaped. You can still lift the same amount of weight. The iron doesn't care what size of car you drive. It's okay. You're still a man. This is a two-door, inline four-cylinder, body-on-frame, four-passenger, 4x4 off-roader that does everything a Jeep does everything an XJ does everything a 4Runner or Land Rover or Blazer or Bronco does, just on a smaller scale. It has a mass airflow sensor held in with rubber bands. It has 4 valves per cylinder, but only one overhead cam. They couldn't put dual overhead cam on the intake or timing belt cover, but they could put the number 16 on it and hold their dicks behind the podium during the keynote speech. Mutually masturbating each other in the name of teamwork. They disguise their mediocre orgasms with sneezes, and the VHS camcorders can't tell. The Geo Tracker was a Suzuki Sidekick, wrapped in a flag and carrying a cross, sold at Chevy dealerships to fool Americans who graduated in the bottom quarter of their graduating class into buying their first Japanese car. The engine is part of Suzuki's G series. It's a GL16B or LS5L01. It has an aluminum block, aluminum cylinder head, and it makes 96 horsepower at 5,600 RPM and a respectable 103 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 RPM. That isn't bad for an EC or ED Civic, which moved through the air with some efficiency with a manual transmission. This isn't that. The Geo Tracker is a Lego brick with a roof rack and slush box automatic transmission. Oh yeah, even though this is a Suzuki, with a Suzuki engine, the Geo Tracker came with a GM TH180 3-speed auto designed in 1969 by Holden. It's a transmission made for city delivery vans, so when we asked this Geo to do a hill pull, this happened.
Classic. All right, so yes, this is foot on the floor. Oh, it doesn't go to red line. At wide open throttle, it won't go to red line. Nope. Why buy a key car? You can buy one of these and have the same experience. What was that pow-pow? Did I run over something? I think it might run over something.
But that's okay. The Geo Tracker was never designed for speed, and none of the advertisements of the era ever claimed speed or performance. You were meant to drive this little 4x4 on a back road to a trail or to the beach, lock the hubs, and have fun. Listen to Steal My Sunshine by Len and have fun. Enjoy a day of four-wheeling and have fun. Grab the oh shit handle and shout oh shit and laugh when you don't die. This little SUV has color transition graphics, and it's okay to like bright colors. You're still a man. The seats have a jazz color pattern, and you're still a man. And it's okay if this is the first time you've ever used a transfer case. The Geo tells you, in plain English, how to use it.
Okay, little guy, you got some hills to deal with. Let's see what you do. Go 4x4 on 4x4ing in the cemetery. Is it okay to hold it first like this?
That's just once.
Alright.
Yeah.
Alright.
So I've been talking for a while about how you're still a man, and I get it. At first glance, there's something downtrodden about a Geo Tracker's appearance, like it's awaiting your mockery. It almost looks like a kid who makes fun of himself to preempt the bullies. I can't think of many cars that have taken as unfair a beating as this. It's a far better car than appearances would suggest, even if you understand why appearances would suggest it. The Geo Tracker is a strange little vehicle. It was initially dubbed as a mini SUV before getting grouped in with light trucks. And just how every comedian has a Christopher Walken impression, every market seemingly had their own tracker under a different name. For what was basically a slightly larger Suzuki Samurai, the Tracker would be called everything from the Vitara to the Sunrunner, or the Sidekick, the Escudo, or eventually when Geo was done, this was called the Chevy Tracker, or the GMC Tracker, depending on your market. Did it need so many identities? How many times can you take a picture with the same roll of film before the images become an indigestible bukkake of copied homework? The Tracker, or Sidekick, debuted in 1988 for the 1989 model year as a joint venture between Suzuki and General Motors. But the majority of the Trackers in those first few years had to be built in Japan due to delays at the General Motors Canadian manufacturing plant. You might not think this would be a big deal, but when those Japan-built Trackers were imported to the United States, it became clear that those weren't necessarily optimized for the West. Because they didn't even, right-hand drive in Japan, left-hand drive in the North America. But did they move the hood release lever? Nope. It's still on the right-hand side. It's in the glove box. Oh, and your spare tire is on the wrong side of the back, the wrong corner of the back. Well, in Japan, it's not the wrong side, but this messes with your rear visibility in the rearview mirror. It's like, what is the bare minimum we have to do to make this car sellable in the United States, and what don't we have to do? It's like the equivalent of, I've made this joke before, but the equivalent of the kid who raises his hand saying, "How long does my paper have to be?" At least 1,500 words. And guess what? As a teacher, you are going to get, if you count them, 1,500 words. Is there a single contraction in that English paper? No, there isn't. Of course, what's weirder is that by 1995, this shouldn't have been an issue anymore, but the difference here are the modifications. The front grille here is from a 92 Tracker, and that shouldn't make much of a difference. But according to our volunteer, Nick, this has the rear bumper from a Suzuki model. Also, because this is body on frame, this is still technically a truck. So the chicken tax started looking at this and saying, hey, where's my share of my import tariff? So this came from the CAMI factory, short for Canadian Automotive Manufacturing Incorporated. So they built these cars to be shipped to the United States as an end run around the chicken tax. And in the 90s, it didn't feel like you stepped into the twilight zone anytime you came across one of these things. Because even though they were beach cruisers and day trippers for people who didn't want to be seen in a Jeep, they also weren't conspicuous. In the 90s, Geo Trackers were everywhere. But today in 2024, these feel unique. Because the industry has moved so far away from the ideology of a little 4x4 like this, where it's kind of an SUV, but not really. It's kind of a Jeep, but it's too small. Probably closer to the crossover, but it has way more utility. The lockers, the low range, it's the rare case of an SUV that was seemingly created for no other reason than for casual amusement. It's not built for the practicality of an SUV or a truck with larger storage capacity, and it doesn't offer the same sort of rugged appeal of a more dedicated off-road option like, at the time, the Jeep TJ. But its small size let it do things that a 4x4 truck can't do. The wheelbase is so short, you have to make a sincere effort to high center this thing over any obstacle. Even the mileage is fantastic. The EPA rates the manual transmission version of this, not the automatic, but the manual transmission of this as getting 37 miles per gallon city and 44 highway for a combined mileage of 40 miles per gallon. But the automatic gets 26 city and 31 highway with a combined 28. Makes a lot more sense. I think they got that high mileage, a high EPA for the manual transmission by never exceeding 50 miles an hour. Nick got this Geo Tracker because he wanted something OBD1 as a challenge, and 1995 was the last year for that. Most Geo Trackers were convertibles, and for people my age, you remember these things mostly by their ragged ragbacks. So it would have a roll bar, but the back half of the roof was a ragtop, a convertible, and all of them rotted away. They were so cheap. This one isn't that. It's a tin top. It's completely a hard top. I didn't even know these existed. I thought they were all convertibles. This was an Arizona car too. And even when he got it home to the East Coast, he took the engine out. I mean, the engine had a piston slap issue, so he got a new block, put in all new hoses as well, cleaned the engine up really nice when it was on the engine stand. Wow, look at this thing. And had to have some bigger wheels. Yes, they do rub. They rub a little, but they do rub. The car feels way younger than a Suzuki/Geo with 144,000 miles on it. The Geo Tracker may not be a car that seems cool here in the 21st century. It feels much like a product of its time, of the 90s. It's like if you made a car out of Baywatch, not even the show, but just the concept of Baywatch. It feels dated, but you know what? Who cares? Age makes seemingly uncool things way easier to love. This is nearly a 30-year-old car, and by sheer virtue of so few options like this existing today, thanks to Cash for Clunkers, the Geo Tracker feels like an actual overlooked gem. And this is without even getting into how it drives. It drives like a K car. Are you upset that you live in a state where they're not letting you register or insure Japanese K cars? Well, get a Geo Tracker. You will get the K car experience. It's just as slow, it's just as sloppy, and it's just as weird. Sometimes we put an undue amount of pressure on our cars to be more than just cars, which prevents us from enjoying them on their own terms. See, you're still a man if you drive this. When met on its own terms and taken for what it is, this is a fun little pseudo SUV with all the accoutrements of an SUV that makes you want to call up friends you haven't spoken to in years and see how far south they're willing to travel for a weekend. The Geo Tracker is an egg that hatches friendship. It's enjoyable in a way that makes you forget you're supposed to be looking for excuses to like it, and I love that. When you're on cloud nine, you don't check any of the clouds around you for silver linings. And when you're in a Geo Tracker, a good Geo Tracker like this one, it's like someone bottled up the concept of summer and poured it into the fuel tank. And if there's a drawback, it's that. This feels like a summer car, not really fit for colder weather. Even though it could handle it, it has a heater, of course. But then, what is a classic car if not something that stays indoors most of the year? And I noticed here in rural Pennsylvania, a group of cis men who, through appearance and accessory, boast about them meeting the bare minimum of masculinity with their black t-shirts, black American flags, black trucks, black Android phones covered in black phone cases, black tattoos of black widow spiders and black jeans and black boots and black Punisher logos on blacked out windows, and their black belts hold up black tactical flashlights and black anodized aluminum multi-tools next to their black Gen 4 G20s. You can't see what they're looking at because of their black Oakleys and their black baseball caps pulled nice and low. If femininity and softness and anything approaching queer culture is associated with bright and cheerful colors, colorful colors, and nuance, then this battalion of men have created a perimeter where no nuance or color exists. There is only hard, unsmiling determinism and the distilled signifiers of basic manhood, elevated to celebratory status, as if being a man is the pinnacle of achievement, and any movement or speech in any direction from that North Pole center black dot is a move toward femininity, queerness, weakness, softness. So in their black corral, those true men sit, arms locked, protected from the gender ambiguity of a confusing world. Like pill bugs or armadillos, they're surrounded in their black armor. sometimes literally. I see them jogging in those weighted vests that look like body armor. And the weights you add to them. What a surprise. They look like magazines. I don't run, because running is running away. And I stand my ground. But if I wear this costume that looks like war, then I won't be gay. I love it when one of those black on black be a man men finally comes out, buys a friend-shaped car like this, and drives it to a furry convention hugging everyone and making up for a lifetime of devoid platonic physical contact. Geo Tracker. Friendly, fun car. Live your life.